Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who is Shyam Das. Shyam, you met the devotees, I believe, in 1992, 3 years before me, and you met Srila Gurudeva in the same year I met Srila Gurudeva in 96, and we must have taken Diksha, I think we may have taken Diksha together. Which day in Kartik? Because you took Diksha from Gurudeva in Kartik 96, so did I. So I'll be interested to know which day of Kartik. Was it the last day or was it previous to that?
I suppose you should help me move this thing.
Oh, let's put the mute on there. Prabhu, so we're very close as Diksha Godbrothers. A very warm welcome for Pushpanjali. Sorry about the late start. It's all my fault. I had a technical moment, shall we say. So we're starting at 12:40 UK time, and you have until 10 past 1 for your Pushpanjali. Haribol, Dandavats, brother.
Hare Krishna. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, very good. Very, very good.
Okay. Guruve Gaura Chandraya, Radhikaya Tadalaye, Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya, Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha. Mukhang Karoti Vachalang, Pangung Langayate Giring, Yat Kripatamahang Vande, Shri Gurung Dinatarine, Paramananda Madhavam. So first of all, I offer my Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my beloved Diksha Guru, Srila Bhaktivinoda Nityalila Vishnu Vishnu Pada Stotra Sadashi Srimad Bhaktivinoda Narayana Gosvami Maharaj, and to my Shiksha Guru, Srimad Bhaktivedanta Akinchan Goswami Maharaj, who lives in Govardhan, and to Nityalila Vishnu Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who brought us all really to Krishna consciousness in the first place. I think without him, none of us would have heard of Krishna, and we'd all be sitting in the pub somewhere smoking fags. And to all Vaishnava and Vaishnavi listeners, my Dandavat pranams. So as Yashodanandan Prabhu rightly stated, I first met the devotees in 1992. I was 21 years old. I was hanging out outside McDonald's, as 21-year-olds are wont to do. And one of the kids there said, "Oh, look, there's a Hare Krishna. Go and talk to him." So I said, okay, you know, up for a challenge, up for something new. So I went and spoke to this monk who is in my hometown of Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire. And his name was, back to Andy, he's now Adi Guru, which is apt because he was my Adi Guru, my original guru. So he had a Bhagavatam, and he first canto, and he showed me, he said, "This book is Sanskrit." And I said, "Oh, Sanskrit, that's interesting." My Latin teacher showed me a Sanskrit book, and it looked very interesting, but very hard, especially because of the writing. And he said, "Oh, you're a scholar." He buttered me up, you know, he knew his stuff. He gave me a bit of flattery, and it worked. So I was like, at last, someone recognizes me. So I took the book, I gave him whatever I had in my pocket, which wasn't very much. He said, "That's okay." Someone else gave a big donation, so they covered yours. I went home, the proud owner of a first canto Srimad Bhagavatam. And this book, they say Prabhupada's books are time bombs. Well, this one had a very short fuse. It went off that day and it completely transformed my life. I read the introduction, and I remember reading the Shikshashtakam at the end of Prabhupada's introduction to Srimad Bhagavatam. Also, the first word that I came upon on page 1 was spiritual communism. So at the time I was a socialist or communist, and I was looking for spirituality. So I thought, wow, this book is for me. Yeah, then I remember reading all the description of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's life sketch and all these long, I remember thinking, why am I reading all these long Indian names? What is this doing for me? You know, Raghunath Das Goswami and all this. What I didn't realize is those names are just as powerful and even more merciful than the name of Krishna, and they were having a transforming effect. Also, the Shikshashtakam, Srimati Radharani, in the last chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita, says that anyone who reads this Shikshashtakam, their bhakti will increase day by day. So I didn't know what effect this was having on me, but it certainly did. So then after that, I sat and I did a little meditation, sat in the yoga posture and regulated my breathing. And I didn't chant Hare Krishna. I chanted Om. I'd read some books about yoga, and I was reading the Bible. Actually, it's interesting. I was reading the Gideon's Bible they gave me at school, and there were prayers in the beginning of it. So I was praying, "Dear Lord, please show me what you would have me do as I read your book, and please give me the desire to live according to your teachings." So after a month, along came this Bhagavatam, exactly that. Showed me the path that he wanted me to follow and gave me the desire to follow it. So so I sat and did this meditation, and had a very, I was raised an atheist. I was raised, I went to a Christian school when I was 5, and I came home one day and said, "Mum, who's Jesus?" And she said, "He was just an ordinary bloke. It's all rubbish. For people with weak minds, you're not allowed to believe in it." I was like, okay, 5 years old. It wasn't until I was 18 that I started to think for myself and started to inquire and read books like the Tao Te Ching. And I think I read the Penguin Bhagavad Gita, Penguin Classic. It's a classical, right? It didn't have much effect on me. And a lot of spiritual books, Tibetan Buddhist, and as I said, ending up with the Bible. So I did this meditation. I had a very profound experience. Basically, it was like merged into Brahman is the only way I can describe it. I was just bathed in this saffron golden light, and I was that light. I didn't exist anymore, but I knew that I existed eternally. I knew that I didn't have to eat, sleep, drink, or even breathe to exist. I exist. I realized it. I didn't think it. I knew it. And it was a very profound experience, very, very pleasurable as well, very complete absence of any suffering. But as happens, you eventually get bored of floating around in Brahman, and I sort of came half to consciousness. And my mother came home and said, "Would you like some lunch?" Which is a fairly reasonable request, to which my answer was, "Why?" I was still kind of half in the world and half not, so she's like, whatever. Anyhow, I decided from the meditation and the reading of the Bhagavatam to follow, spontaneously, not having read, "Oh, you should follow these 4 principles," but I decided of my own volition that I should follow these regulative principles. I thought to myself, I'm eating meat. This is very bad. I'm killing animals. It's wrong. I'm causing them to suffer for my own pleasure. So from today, I won't do that anymore. And my sister was into animal rights, and she'd just become vegetarian like a week before. And my mother said, "Oh, I will too." And I remember my response was, "No way, I'm going to keep eating meat." But then when I got the Bhagavatam a week later, that changed my mind. And I was like, "Yep, I'm on board too." So the whole house was vegetarian, which is great. I can still go home for Christmas dinner, and there'll be a nut roast and an eggless cake. And that's very nice, and coincidental that we all decided to go veggie at this exact same time. I thought, why am I chasing girls? Why am I going to the pub, or wasting my money on drink and cigarettes and all this nonsense? I'm not going to do this anymore. So I basically decided of my own volition to start following the 4 regulative principles. Then I went to find the town Hare Krishna, who was called Hare Krishna Mick. So I went and looked for his name. Is now Madai Das, which is an interesting name. So I went and found him, and I brought a sandwich that I'd made. I wanted him to show me how to offer food to Krishna. So he showed me. I went to his room, and basically he had a little altar with Prabhupada and Mahaprabhu and Radha Krishna. He put the sandwich in front of them. He said, he did obeisances. He said, "Say this, dear Lord Krishna, please accept this humble offering," and then chant the Hare Krishna mantra. So that was nice and simple. So from then on, I was offering my food. And he said, "Would you like to go and visit the temple?" And I said, "Yeah, that would be great." So one night he drove us up to Bhaktivedanta Manor in Watford, about 20 miles away. And it was very nice. It was Kartik, because they said, "Oh, this is very auspicious that you've come in this month." And they sang Damodar Ashtakam, and they showed me all the deities. I was quite bewildered. They showed me the picture of Nishingadev ripping Hiranyakashipu apart with blood everywhere. I was like, "What the hell's that?" I said, "Oh, don't worry about that. This is Radha, this is Krishna." And then they said to me, "Do you want to spend the night? Do you want to stay the night?" So I was like a bit worried. Am I joining a cult? You know, am I going to be brainwashed? Am I going to become a Mooney? You know, but it was at the. I think Syama Sundar, one of the very early devotees, wrote this poem about before you think I'm loony, no, I'm talking about Narada Muni. They wrote a poem about a spaceman. So am I going to become a anyway? So yeah, I spent the night and got up. I was very excited. I woke up about 3, got up at 4 and had a shower and went to Mangalarti. And it was absolutely charming, very beautiful, you know, golden altar, low lights, no light in the temple, just the only light is on the altar. And the deities are there in their night clothes, very beautiful. The ladies are on one side and the gents are on the other, and they're dancing very soft Sanskrit song, Samsara Davanala. Yeah, I was really charmed by this. It was very nice. And then we worshipped Tulsi. I didn't really know what was going on there. And then they gave me a string of beads and they said, right, walk around that plant clockwise. And when you're tired of walking, sit down. And when you're tired of sitting, then walk. I was like, okay. So I'm chanting Hare Krishna, going around the beads, all the monks are there. It's like, you know, being in a Buddhist monastery or something. It's quite interesting. From that day, I was chanting 4 rounds a day. I'm sure I did more than that in that japa time because it's long enough for 8 or 12. But from that day, I was doing 4 rounds every day. And then I was visiting and sometimes for longer for the weekend. Then I went for a week and it was Gaur Purnima. And Gaur Purnima was a fabulous festival, lots of kirtan, delicious prasadam at sunset, moonrise. And then the next day I went back home after a week of living in the temple with incense and bells and chanting and all these things. And first thing my mother said when I got home, she was tired. She said, "Can you feed the dog?" So I'm spooning this gross nastiness into a bowl for the dog. And I thought, no, can't do this anymore. So I went upstairs, packed a bag, said, "Mum, I'm going to live in the temple." Had a gyro waiting there for me. Took that to the temple, said, "This is all the money I have, take it and me as well." So they had a little 2-minute meeting and they said, "Okay, you're hired." So I washed pots for a few weeks and then they put me on the Bhakti program, Bhakti course. 3 months, doing all different kinds of service, working in the kitchen, cleaning the temple, working with the cows, sometimes going out on books, a little bit of everything really. And then after 3 months, I passed that. They gave me a service. They made me the receptionist. So I was a receptionist in the morning, and my godbrother, Sriram Saka, who at the time was called Sadhu Sangha, was the evening receptionist. So sometime a little later, I went on Padayatra, walked around London. We went to Germany. I got stuck in Germany for a month rolling sweet balls with Yugoslavs. Then I went to Paris. I lived in France in New Mayapur and Paris Temple for 6 months and eventually made it home to Mother's for Christmas '95. And around that time, Sridham said to me, "Oh, my guru is coming to England. He's coming to the West. Do you want to come and meet him? He's a pure devotee." And I said, "Yes, I always want to meet a pure devotee." On my travels, I'd met Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj, and he was always saying that we'll come to that. It's also part of the story. So I said to Sridham, "Yeah, sure. Tell me what." He said, "Okay, I'll let you know when he comes." And then in May, I got the call from Sridham saying, "Gurudev's here, come on to my place." So Sridham had a 3-bed flat in Radlett above the shops. This was the first, well, it's the second place in Europe that Gurudev went. He flew from India for the first time, age 75 in 1996, to Holland first. And after a week in Holland, he came to England. So Sridham's flat was the second place he'd ever been outside India. And it was pretty small, you know, it was just a shop above a flat, 2 stories, 3 bedrooms. But it was absolutely packed in there. There was like 50 or 60 devotees in this flat meant for 3 people to live in. And yeah, it was packed. Like every step had 2 devotees sitting on it. You had to squeeze past to go up the steps, and everywhere you went, there was devotees. It was packed. So I was wearing a sweatshirt, Bhaktivedanta Institute, the picture of Srila Prabhupada, and some Sanskrit, Bhaktivedanta Institute, and some Sanskrit, which said Atato Brahma Jigyasa. So Gurudev spotted this and he said, "Oh, you," he said, "Atato Brahma Jigyasa." That became my name for the week. If you know, oh, anyone, can you tell you Atato Brahma Jigyasa? Can you? So he said, "What is that, Atato Brahma Jigyasa?" So I rattled off the translation that I'd learned. Now is the time to inquire what is the absolute truth. That's how Prabhupada translated it. And Gurudev didn't confirm or deny. He just said, "I want that you should come to me and I will tell you what is Atato Brahma Jigyasa." So I said, "Yes, Maharaj." I felt very humbled and blessed to be mildly chastised by a pure devotee. And that evening, his servant, Pundarik Brahmachari, I was reading Gurudev's book, Harikatha, and it was talking about Govardhan, how Govardhan is the best, Haridasa Varya, the best of the servants of Sri Hari. He's providing minerals for the Krishna and the gopis to make colors for makeup and dyeing cloth, and grass for the cows, so the cows can make nice milk and ghee and all these things from which the cowherd community make their living. And also caves where Krishna and the gopis can be alone, away from the eyes of society. So I'd never read anything like this in my life before. It was pretty far out, pretty Rasic stuff. And Pundarik came and he said, "Oh, what are you reading?" And I read it, and he said, "Yes," he said, "this is Atato Brahma Jigyasa." So I was very amazed, because Gurudev had fulfilled his promise and told me what is Atato Brahma Jigyasa, and his conception of that Brahma Jigyasa, inquiry into spirit, was so much higher than mine. Mine was like Shankaracharya and Vedanta Sutra and Mayavad, and a bit dry and philosophical and a little bit dull, but his was Krishna and the gopis are dancing in Govardhan. And so, yeah, I was very amazed. He fulfilled his promise effortlessly through the agent of his limb, his brahmachari, and that his conception was so high. So, yeah, I was impressed. And when he went, I had a job at the time. I couldn't follow him over to Glastonbury and all the other, Birmingham and all the places he went. And then America, like lots of devotees, just gave up everything and went. I should have, but I didn't. But I did think, now I should go to Vrindavan. So yeah, I thought to myself, you know, they told us don't go to Vrindavan straight away. Well, I thought, well, I've been around 4 years now. It's time I'm going to go to Vrindavan. I didn't think, oh, I'm going to go to Vrindavan and find Gurudev and surrender to him, become his disciple and all these things. I just thought I should go to Vrindavan. So I was working. I was reading Gurudev's Nectar of Govinda Leela book. Can you still hear me? There's something's changed on the screen.
It's perfect, Prabhu. Perfect.
Okay, good. Right, so yeah, so came Kartik, had my ticket, went to Vrindavan, got off the plane, got a taxi to the train station. It was a bit of an eye-opener going through Delhi in 1996. Incredible amount of dust and smoke before they cleaned up all the engines, and shops which were just a tarpaulin with someone sat under it, and you know, every kind of animal walking up the main road. There was goats and cows and dogs and donkeys and oxen and even an elephant, nicely decorated with chalk and, you know, colorful. And yeah, my mouth was just down here somewhere. I'm looking out the window at Delhi. It was a culture shock. I got the train to Mathura. I went to Krishna Janmabhoomi and got a room for 50 rupees, which was about £1, just under £1. And a meal for 25 rupees, which was 50p. And they kept feeding me until I was like fit to burst. And the next day I went to Vrindavan to Krishna Balaram temple, and I had £100 in my pocket, and I was ready to sign up and do their parikram. And in the courtyard of Krishna Balaram temple, selling Gaur Govinda Maharaj's books, was Prem Prayojan Prabhu, who at the time was called Parantapa. And I knew him. I'd met him at the manor and I knew he was a disciple of Gaur Govinda Maharaj. And he said to me, if you want Krishna Prem, you must get it from a Premi Bhakta. Only a millionaire can give you $1 million. I said, yes, I agree. I heard your Guru Maharaj say this many times. You know, if you want Prem, you must get it from a Premi Bhakta. And I accept it. I agree. But he also said, sadhu never speaks theoretically. So if you're going to stand there and tell me I have to take Krishna Prem from a Premi Bhakta, you also have to tell me who is a Premi Bhakta. Otherwise, it's useless, right? And he said, okay. You're right. He said, don't tell anyone we're going to Mathura. And he packed up his books and we went to Mathura and we went to Keshavji Gaudiya Math, where Srila Prabhupada took sannyas. And I was like, oh, this Maharaj, you know, Gurudeva just brought me to him, you know, completely unknown to me. And everything was a little bit different. You know, they were singing lots of bhajans and they were singing stuff I'd never heard before. Everything was just a little different there. And so I was going to go back to ISKCON. And I expressed that. And the devotees said, oh, no, come with us. You'll get really nice Harikatha. Oh, well, you know, ISKCON have pretty nice Harikatha too. Oh, but you'll get better sadhu sangha here. Well, you know, I like Lokanath Maharaj. He does the ISKCON parikram. And they gave me all good reasons why I should come and do parikram with them, which all weren't really getting through. So then they said, oh, our parikram is $100, theirs is £100. So it was £66 to do theirs. So that made a difference because I was on a budget. I said, oh, okay. So I stayed for that rather pathetic reason. So, yeah, we were doing parikram. It was before Giriraj Gaudiya Math had been built. So we were all staying in Modi Bhavan on the second part of the parikram. We were all living in one room, big room, hall, with saris hung in the middle to demarcate the Mataji's side and the Prabhuji's side. Yeah, it was quite austere. I was sleeping next to, you know, every 3 feet there was a bedroll, and that was your space. And Madan Mohan Prabhu, I was next to Madan Mohan Prabhu. They were the early disciples. There was Sridham and Indulekha. There was Madan Mohan and Vishaka. There was Achyuta. There was Ananda Mohan and his wife, and Chitra. And they were the early disciples that came before Gurudev left. And also, you know, there were Prabhupada disciples like Sriman Swargiya Raghunath Prabhu, who passed away recently, Krishna Kripa Prabhu's father. He had met Gurudev in the 80s, and a lot of Prabhupada disciples that lived in Vrindavan, they had met Gurudev previously, because Gurudev, as Prabhupada requested, was helping look after them. So, yeah, anyway, we were with the first cohort back in those days. There was like about 80 or 100 of us on the parikram, Westerners, and Gurudev would walk around that room and say, Haribol, how are you? It was very nice. It was very intimate. One day I was sitting reading one of Prabhupada's books, and Gurudev, you know, I looked up and there were these little legs and a saffron dhoti. I looked up, it was Gurudev. So I got up, I did my obeisances and stood up, and he said, what are you reading? And I said, oh, Swami Maharaj, Gurudev. And he said, read it to me. And so I read this particular passage, was Prabhupada being very heavy about Western civilization, being nothing but a polished arrangement of hogs and dogs for eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And Gurudev said, oh, Swamiji is preaching so strongly. And then he clapped me on the shoulder and nearly knocked me off my feet. I was amazed how strong he was. And he said, don't be animal. So I felt very blessed, not only to get the touch of a pure devotee's hand, but also being raised in ISKCON, or my devotional career beginning in ISKCON. I was actually quite afraid that if I screwed up, if I fell down, that I would indeed become an animal in my next life. And so I felt Gurudev saying, don't be animal, was not just an instruction, but also a blessing, you know. So I no longer had any fear of being an animal in my next life after that. So anyhow, I asked Naveen Krishna Brahmachari, that Bhaktivedanta Madhav Maharaj, for darshan, and he arranged that I could come and see Gurudev. So I had some questions, and Gurudev just cut through my questions. He said, "Why not taking Harinam?" And I was like, "Bit. Well, I wasn't following all the principles that year previous to going to India, and I wasn't chanting regularly." And Gurudev said, "You must chant regularly. If you want to chant Krishna's holy name purely, I will give. Tomorrow I will give, otherwise not." And then he just turned his back on me. So it's like, Krishna's pure holy name or get lost, basically. That was my choice. And there was Madhav Maharaj behind him going, "Say yes, say yes." So I said, okay. So it was actually 2 days later in Nandagram, you were asking. It was on Gopashtami in Nandagram. And it was just me. I know devotees got initiated in groups, but I got initiated just by myself, which was a real privilege, to be in the room with Gurudev and to get the explanation of Mahamantra and the beads. This head bead is Radha and Krishna, and these beads are Lalita, Vishaka, and all 108 principal gopis. The 8 beads are the Ashtasakis. And like that, he said Hare Rama means Radhika Raman, not Dashrati Ram, not Rohini Nandan Ram. So Hare Rama is not Balaram, is not Lord Ram, is Radha and Krishna, Radha Raman. Oh, and when I went in the room, he looked up and he said, "So you will be mine forever?" And I was just gobsmacked. My mouth was just going up and down. No words were coming out of it. Madhav Maharaj was there again behind him going, "Say yes, say yes." So I said, okay. And he said, "Still fearing?" I said, "Yes, Gurudev." He said, "Don't fear." He said, "Be bold. I want you to be so pure and strong." So I always remembered that very nice instruction. Then everyone got their name on the Kartik Purnima, the last day of Kartik. And everyone's getting their big long Sanskrit names. You know, Yashoda Nandan Das Adhikari and Pran Govinda Das Brahmachari, and some devotees didn't know how to say their name, didn't know how to spell their name, didn't know what their name meant, but I did. I knew a little Sanskrit, and I was feeling a bit proud, you know. I could understand all these names, and I was waiting for my big long Sanskrit name. I think Bhaktivedanta Garbhasta Nemi Maharaj. That's got to be the king of long names for a very intelligent, clever devotee. So I'm waiting for my big long name, you know, and I was last. Everyone's had their name, and I'm, you know. So they said my Karmi name, and I stood up, and they said Shamdas, and then you know, standing there with my hand up, Shamdas, so looking around, Shamdas, like this, and then finally Shamdas Brahmachari. So it's quite funny. You know, I'm waiting for my big long Sanskrit name, and I get the shortest name in the book, and I didn't even get like an affix to it like everybody else, you know. So Gurudev knew many examples of Gurudev's omniscience. Everyone's experienced it, you know. So then I was living in Mathura. I met Sriman Sukhananda Prabhu, now Bhaktivedanta Kinj Maharaj. He told me I should beg Gurudev let me stay in the Holy Dham. So I did that. He told me, let me stay in the Holy Dham. I will only live in Vrindavan. And even if you curse me, I will not leave Vrindavan or Mathura. So it didn't quite come out like that when I actually spoke to Gurudev. Gurudev said, "Oh, you should go to Birmingham with the other boys and help make the center there." And I was like, "Oh, Gurudev, I want to stay in Vrindavan. I want to stay here with you." And when court asked for justification of that, I could only come out with, "Oh, but Gurudev, it's so cold over there." So it didn't exactly come out the way it was meant to. But anyhow, Gurudev let me stay, and I did. But I got a cold and then I drank water from the wrong place, which in Mathura is a very dangerous thing to do. Mathura water is notoriously bad. It was poisoned by one demon called Lavanasur, and that's why it actually tastes salty. So I drank some of this salty water without knowing it, and I got dysentery. I got really sick, and I couldn't chant my rounds. I was too weak. I was going to the toilet 16 times a day, but I wasn't able to chant 16 rounds every day. So I was feeling quite morose. So I've only just taken initiation. I already can't do it. I was really unwell, actually. I lost a third of my body weight. I went from 12 stone to 8 stone. So I was like skin and bone. And anyway, in this sort of weakened condition, one day, this big, strong Russian brahmachari came to Gurudev and he said, I want to take initiation from you. And Gurudev said, why from me? He said, there are so many more qualified, like Gopal Krishna. He named some ISKCON sannyasis. So why you want from me? And this boy didn't really have an answer to this question. Oh, he'd already stated that he'd been doing pranayam for 10, 15 years, and he'd been chanting 16 rounds for 5 years. So he's pretty qualified, seemingly, you know, to me. Most ISKCON gurus would have snapped him up, you know, big, strong, healthy, practicing brahmachari. So, but Gurudev just said, you know, when he couldn't answer why from me you want to take initiation, Gurudev just said, I think I'm not your guru at all. I was really shocked. And so was this boy. He didn't have an answer to that. He just went away disappointed. So I was so shocked, like, why did he reject this very nice boy and accept me, you know, useless here. So I couldn't understand it, and I pondered over it for a long time, and eventually I just came to the conclusion that firstly, Gurudev knows our swarup. He knows who we are in our heart, our soul shape. He knows who is in his line. And secondly, it's not a question of you're qualified and you can do this for me. It's just a question of love. And so that really kind of touched my heart. So I went on parikram every year from 96 to 2010, every year to Vrindavan or Navadip, sometimes both. I think once or twice I missed one. Trying to just towards the end. Yeah, I know time's coming up. Towards the end, at Govardhan, there were, you know, like 2,000 devotees from all over the world, South America, Russia, China. It wasn't like 80 of us friends anymore who all knew each other well. It was people everywhere. You couldn't get near Gurudev. There's a big scrum around him. And I remember being a bit nostalgic for the old days. And I was sitting there in class thinking, I want to look into my Gurudev's beautiful blue eyes. So at the end of the class, Maharaj called me, oh, Syam, Gurudev wants to see you. So I went to Gurudev's room, and Gurudev was wearing these glasses, really big, thick glasses. They made his eyes twice the size. And he looked up and he opened his eyes wide and he said, Syam. So I got my wish. Like 15 minutes later, I wished for looking into Gurudev's beautiful blue eyes. And I looked, you know, 15 minutes later, there I am looking into them, double magnified with these huge glasses he's wearing. And, you know, it's such a sweet way he fulfilled that wish. And then I also got, after that, a picture of just Gurudev's eyes. And that lives on my kitchen cupboard. So whenever I want to eat, I'm looking into Gurudev's beautiful blue eyes again. Yeah, another example of omniscience and of Gurudev fulfilling our desires. Everyone has got the experience, you know, they have a question, he would just answer it in the class, or that he knew exactly what they were thinking. In fact, one time in America, he said, don't try and cheat Gurudev. He said, I know everything. He said, otherwise, how am I Vaishnav? I also remember him saying to the Prabhupada disciples in America, you should see me as your Swamiji also. He is in my heart and I'm in his heart. Don't see us as different. We're tadatmik.
Thank you, Syam.
Just almost there. So yeah, that's pretty much it actually. Just remember the 2010 Gurudev was very unwell, and went to Kartik as usual. Gurudev, he said that he would leave this world on his godbrother's appearance day, and that day came. It was the day, 2 days after Diwali, day after Govardhan Puja, and so we're all very worried. At that time, he wasn't moving, he wasn't speaking, but he did survive that. And at the end of the month, he was a little better, and he came out in the wheelchair and he spoke and he said, I want you, I think that you are all successful because you've done this Brajmandal Parikrama, and you should come next year and come to Navadvip as well, and I will be there also. So I thought that that meant he would still be here for Navadvip Parikrama, but obviously he left, as he said, on his Gurudev's disappearance day in December 29th, 2010, and put us all in a notion of separation. But we all have experience. Gurudev said, I'm closer to you than the air you breathe. We all have experience that Gurudev is still here. He's not gone anywhere. He's still with us. He's in our heart, and he's very kindly leading us back home. He once said, don't quarrel with your godbrothers. He said, you're all flowers, and I am stringing a garland of you all, and I'm offering to the neck of Radha and Krishna. So Vairagya Yug Bhakti Rasang Prayatner Apayan Mamanavip Samandam Kripam Buddhirias Paradukka Dukki Sanatanang Stang Paradukka Dukki Narayanang Stang Paradukka Dukki. I didn't want, I had no desire for this bhakti laced with renunciation, but you very kindly made me drink it. So by bringing me to Vrindavan, and by bringing me to Mathura, and by making me stay, and by giving me Harinam, all these things which I hadn't decided to do for myself, he very kindly made me drink this Bhakti Ras. So thank you very much. My eternal dandavats to my Diksha Guru, Divine Master, Nitya Vishnu Vishnupada Stotra Sadashishma Bhaktivanta Narayana Goswami Maharaj, and to you all. Vancha kalpaturu vishcha kripa sindhu bheva chapatinam pavanibhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Shyam, brother. I knew your offering would be full of color and flavor, and it was. I knew it wouldn't disappoint. I really appreciate how you honored Srila Prabhupada at the beginning, how you said that none of us would have come to Srila Gurudev had it not been for Srila Prabhupada. Firstly, it's very appropriate because our next two speakers, our next speaker is actually a senior Prabhupada disciple, and the speaker after that came to ISKCON and Srila Prabhupada's movement prior to Srila Gurudev coming to the West. So it was very timely, but also because it also reflects Gurudev's heart. Gurudev came as a team, as a tag team with Srila Prabhupada, and he always emphasized that they were working together, and he was working in honor and respect and love for history, for who he called him Swamiji, and wouldn't call him anything else. So I thought that was really appropriate. And thanks for clarifying when you got Diksha. So you're definitely, I have to show you more respect, Prabhu. You're definitely senior. I had a fun tease with Sudevi, as in Kishori, trying to assert that I was senior to her. But then she trumped me because she said, actually, Diksha starts when the pure devotee glances on you. And apparently he glanced on her long before she took Diksha after me, but the glance, no, she took Harinam after me, but she got the glance before me. So I was dead in the water.
I can relate to that because Guru Maharaj glanced on me, and I think it was that glance that brought me to Gurudev.
Oh yeah, totally.
So I'm a week older than you.
You said some two really beautiful things. I thought brought it to a very beautiful, a wonderful conclusion, which I think is great instruction for me and for all of us. You said how it's not a question of qualification; it's a question of love. And on these shows, on these programs, we're often asking people. Some people are quite shy to come forward and make an offering to speak or do some seva or do kirtan or whatever. And one of the things that we often say is, it's not a question of whether you think you're qualified. Do you think your Gurudev is qualified? That's all that matters. My Gurudev, our Gurudev, is qualified to bring us both to the ultimate conclusion, to the transcendental world, to bring us into the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. We can't. So it's actually irrelevant to think of one's own qualification. All we have to think about is, do we think that our Gurudev has that qualification to deliver us? And if the answer is yes, then we can jump in with head first, feet first, or whatever, or a big fat belly flop. Doesn't really matter. And what you said at the end was great. It was icing on the cake, because that's probably my favorite quote. I'm closer to you than the air that you breathe. And I think this really encapsulates that mood of separation, how in separation is the deepest union, and how Vani trumps Vapu. Like for those devotees that maybe didn't have as much association as you or me or others, if you get the essence, if you associate with those who've had association with Gurudev, if you read Gurudev's works, if you do the sadhana, if you open your heart, Srila Gurudev is absolutely available to all. So never think that qualification is down to Vapu, is how much physical association you may have had with Gurudev. Vaishnava history is littered with devotees that demonstrate their qualification has no correlation with their physical association with their guru. Srila Prabhupada is the example in point. I mean, he didn't have that much physical.
Yashadari is the perfect example of that.
I was actually thinking of her while I was.
She's one of the last disciples of Gurudev, and very, very brief association, and such a nice disciple, such a good disciple, doing nice service.
Absolutely.
Well, unfortunately, I can't stay for the whole rest of the program because I'm giving class at the Ganga Matas, so I have to get ready, and I'm I won't be here. But thank you all very much.